The rain hammered down like 1,000 fists on the cracked asphalt of Route 17, turning the empty highway into a slick river of regret. It was just past midnight, the kind of hour when the world feels abandoned, and 16-year-old Mia Reynolds staggered along the shoulder, her soaked hoodie clinging to her like a second skin. Her breaths came in ragged gasps, the world blurring at the edges from exhaustion and whatever shadows chased her from the dim lights of Willow Creek behind. She'd run, far and fast, from the foster home that wasn't a home, from hands that gripped too tight and voices that promised safety but delivered only echoes of fear. Now her legs buckled beneath her, the cold seeping into her bones, and she collapsed into a puddle, her body curling instinctively against the storm's fury. No one saw, no one cared, or so it seemed. But then a low rumble pierced the downpour, growing from a distant growl to a thunderous roar that vibrated through the ground. Headlights sliced through the sheets of rain like golden blades. Not one or two, but dozens, 43 in all, a phalanx of chrome and leather cutting through the night. They didn't speed past, they slowed, engines purring with controlled menace, forming a perfect circle around the fallen girl. A wall of motorcycles, silent now, except for the patter of rain on helmets and the faint hiss of cooling exhaust. At the forefront, on a battered black Harley with faded iron promise patches sewn into the saddlebags, sat Jacob Hale. 48 years old, his face weathered like old leather, scars tracing lines from a life of roads less traveled, his eyes, sharp under the brim of his rain-slicked cap, locked onto Mia's trembling form. He killed the engine first, the signal rippling through the pack like a whisper in the wind. One by one, the bikes went quiet, their riders dismounting in unison, a brotherhood forged not in blood, but in oaths sworn under desert suns. Jacob swung his leg over the seat, boots splashing into the puddle as he approached. The rain traced rivulets down his beard, mixing with the faint scent of motor oil and distant campfires that always seemed to follow him. He'd been riding since dawn, leading this convoy from the dusty outskirts of Reno, chasing ghosts of his own, a promise made 20 years ago to a brother in arms, lost to the sands of some forgotten war. "Watch over the lost ones," Elias had said, his voice fading in a field hospital tent, blood staining the letters of their pact. Jacob had buried that vow deep under layers of miles and regrets, but tonight something pulled him here, to this forsaken stretch of road. Maybe it was the storm, or the way the lightning cracked like a judge's gavel. He knelt beside Mia, his gloved hand hovering before gently touching her shoulder. "Easy, kid," he murmured, voice gravelly from years of wind and whiskey. "You're safe now." The other riders, veterans, mechanics, wanderers, who'd found purpose in the rumble of engines, formed a human shield against the gale. There was Lena, the sharp-eyed nurse with tattoos of blooming roses on her arms, pulling a thermal blanket from her saddlebag. Beside her, Marcus, broad-shouldered and quiet, scanned the horizon for threats, his hand resting on the handlebars like a sentinel. They weren't angels in leather. They carried the weight of their own scars, lost families, betrayed trusts, battles that left hollow victories. But in this moment, under the relentless rain, they were a fortress. Mia stirred, her eyes fluttering open to the surreal sight, towering figures in slickers, faces obscured by visors, yet their presence warm against the chill. Panic flickered in her gaze, but Jacob's steady voice anchored her. "Name's Jacob. We saw you go down. What's got you out here alone?" She coughed, water spilling from her lips, words tumbling out in fragments. The group home. I couldn't stay. The director said I'd be sent away if I talked. But it hurts. Everything hurts." Her voice cracked, not on details, but on the raw edge of survival. Jacob's jaw tightened. He'd heard stories like hers before. Echoes of his own youth in the shadows of broken systems. The Iron Promise wasn't just a club, it was a covenant, born from Elias's dying wish to shield the vulnerable from the world's cruelties. Tonight, that promise stirred awake. As Lena wrapped the blanket around Mia, checking for signs of distress without prying, Jacob stood, signaling to the group. "We ride with her. Nearest shelter's the old mill in Pine Hollow. 20 miles. Keep it tight." The engines ignited again, a symphony of restrained power, but this time one bike carried a passenger. Mia, perched behind Jacob, her arms tentative around his waist. The convoy reformed, parting just enough to let her bike through the center, then closing ranks like armored knights. Rain lashed their faces, but the warmth of shared purpose cut through it. Jacob felt the weight of her trust, fragile as a spark in the wet, and something in his chest unclenched, a long-forgotten ember reigniting. They rolled into Pine Hollow as the storm began to break, the first hints of dawn painting the sky in bruised purples. The mill loomed ahead, its weathered timbers a haven for travelers like them. But as they pulled up, headlights caught on a figure lurking by the tree line. A man in a rumpled suit, phone to his ear, his eyes narrowing at the arriving horde. Jacob's instincts prickled. This wasn't coincidence. Mia tensed behind him. "That's him," she whispered, "the one from the home. He followed me." The wall of motorcycles reformed, engines idling low, a silent warning. Jacob dismounted, helping Mia down, his hand firm on her elbow. "Stay close." The man, Director Harlan by the badge glinting on his lapel, stepped forward, feigning concern. "Miss Reynolds, you can't just run off. There are rules. This circus doesn't change that." His voice dripped with authority, the kind bought with backroom deals and silenced complaints. Jacob met his gaze, unyielding. "Rules bend for the broken ones. You got 5 minutes to explain why you're stalking a kid in the rain, or we make our own justice." The riders shifted, a subtle creak of leather and metal, their loyalty a palpable force. Harlan faltered, glancing at the sea of determined faces. In that pause, Mia straightened, her voice gaining strength. "I'm not going back, not to lies and locked doors." And as the first rays of sun pierced the clouds, glinting off wet chrome, Jacob knew this was just the beginning. A promise revived, a girl reclaimed, and a corruption unraveling thread by thread. The road ahead would test them all, but in the quiet honor of dawn, they were unbreakable. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the mill's sagging porch, where the air hung heavy with the scent of damp wood and pine sap. Director Harlan shifted his weight, his polished shoes sinking into the mud, a stark contrast to the rugged boots of the riders encircling him. His face, pale and pinched under the morning light, betrayed the cracks in his facade, eyes darting from Jacob to the silent wall of motorcycles, their chrome frames still dripping from the night's fury. 43 bikes, 43 souls, bound by something deeper than ink on leather. Harlan cleared his throat, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is a misunderstanding. Mia's under my care, state placement. You can't just intervene like this." Jacob stepped forward, his presence a quiet storm, the faint creak of his leather jacket the only sound breaking the tension. Behind him, Mia clutched the edge of the thermal blanket, her knuckles white, but her chin lifted, a spark of defiance kindled by the unexpected shield around her. Jacob's mind flashed to Elias, that sweltering night in the desert outpost, the air thick with dust and the copper tang of blood. "Promise me, brother," Elias had rasped, clutching the dog tags that now hung heavy around Jacob's neck. "The world's full of wolves in suits. Watch the lost ones. Give 'em what we never had, a way out." Jacob had nodded then, sealing the oath with a grip that outlasted the war. He drifted after, burying it under endless highways, until this girl, this storm-tossed echo, pulled it to the surface. "Care," Jacob echoed, his voice low, carrying the weight of miles unspoken. "Looks more like a cage from where I'm standing." He glanced at Lena, who knelt beside Mia, her hands steady as she assessed the girl's pallor. the faint tremors that spoke of more than just the cold. Lena's own scars ran deep, a decade nursing in war zones, losing a brother to the same system Harlan represented. She met Jacob's eyes with a nod. No breaks, no hidden hurts beyond exhaustion. But the girl's words from the road lingered. He said I'd be sent away if I talked. Jacob's gut twisted. He'd seen it before. Foster mills grinding down the vulnerable, trading silence for funding, honor for expediency. Harlan's laugh was brittle, echoing off the mill's walls. You think you're heroes? A bunch of road rats playing savior. She's a ward of the state. Hand her over, or I'll have the law here in minutes. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering, but Marcus, ever the quiet enforcer, his frame like a oak rooted in the earth, stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the device. The other riders didn't move, but their stillness was thunderous, engines ticking as they cooled, a reminder of the power coiled within. One wrong word, and the road would roar again. Harlan's bluff faltered. Sweat beaded on his brow despite the chill. Mia broke the silence, her voice threading through the standoff like a fragile wire. You followed me. All night. Why? Afraid I'd tell about the others, the ones who disappear. Her words hung, painting shadows of doubt. Harlan's face hardened. But Jacob saw the flicker, the lie beneath the polish. This wasn't just pursuit, it was desperation. A man guarding secrets that could topple his empire of false benevolence. Jacob raised a hand, signaling calm to his crew. We're not the law, Harlan, but we know justice when it's twisted. Ride out, leave the girl, or explain yourself to more than just me. The director hesitated, glancing at the tree line as if expecting backup that never came. The mill's isolation worked both ways. No sirens yet, just the whisper of wind through the pines and the distant call of a crow. Finally, he pocketed the phone, backing toward his sedan parked in the underbrush. This isn't over. You'll hear from authorities. But his retreat was hasty, tires spinning mud as he fled down the gravel path, leaving a plume of dust that the breeze quickly scattered. Jacob exhaled, the tension easing like a bowstring released. He turned to Mia, crouching to her level, rain still dripping from the eaves above. You all right, kid? That took guts. She nodded, but her eyes, storm-grey and searching, held questions. Why'd you stop? Strangers don't just do this. Jacob paused, the weight of the promise pressing on him. Had a friend once. Made me swear to look out for folks like you. Lost causes in a world that forgets them. Name's Jacob Hale. This here's the iron promise. Family by choice, not chance. The group began to stir, riders checking gear, sharing quiet words. Lena offered Mia a protein bar from her pack, the wrapper crinkling softly. Eat. We've got a ways to go. Marcus scouted the perimeter, his boots crunching leaves, ensuring no tails lingered. As the sun warmed the air, chasing away the last of the storm's chill, Jacob felt the pull of the road ahead. Harlan's flight meant trouble brewing, calls to sheriffs, maybe worse, but for now the mill offered respite. A fire kindled in the old hearth, its crackle mingling with the aroma of brewing coffee from a battered percolator. They settled in, the space transforming from hollow shell to makeshift sanctuary. Mia sat by the flames, blanket draped over her shoulders, the warmth coaxing color back to her cheeks. Stories emerged in fragments, hers of the group home's locked rooms and whispered fears. The other kids vanishing into better placements that never materialized. Jacob listened, his face impassive, but inside, Elias's voice echoed, "Honor the oath, Jake, it's all we've got left." His own past surfaced in flashes, a runaway at 15, saved by a grizzled vet on a chopper much like his own. That act had forged him, leading to the club, to battles where loyalty meant survival. As noon approached, the convoy prepped to move. Jacob mapped the route on a worn atlas spread across a crate, south to the neutral ground of Blackridge, a town with a sympathetic judge who'd bent rules for the promise before. "We'll get you clear," he told Mia. "No more running alone." She mounted behind him again, her grip surer this time, the engine's vibration a steady heartbeat under them. The bikes roared to life, a chorus that drowned out doubts, forming up in tight formation, flankers out, scouts ahead. But as they crested the first hill, a glint in the rear view caught Jacob's eye. Distant lights, not storm remnants, but pursuit. Harlan hadn't wasted time. The road twisted ahead, promising chases and choices, but Jacob's resolve hardened like forged steel. This promise, revived in the rain, wouldn't break. Not while 43 hearts rode as one, guardians against the gathering dark. The horizon beckoned, vast and unforgiving, but in their unity, hope flickered, a quiet fire against the coming trial. The asphalt blurred beneath the tires as the convoy surged forward, the engine's growl a defiant anthem against the winding curves of Route 17. Jacob leaned into the turn, the wind whipping at his jacket, carrying the sharp tang of wet earth and pine from the flanking woods. Mia's arms tightened around his waist, her breath steady now, a quiet rhythm syncing with the Harley's pulse. Behind them, the mill faded into the rear view, its silhouette swallowed by the rising hills. But the glint of those distant lights lingered like a predator's eyes, persistent, closing the gap. Harlan's sedan, or whatever shadow he'd summoned, wasn't giving up. Jacob's grip on the handlebars whitened. He'd led chases before, back in the days when borders blurred and oaths were tested in fire, but this felt different, personal. A thread of corruption pulling at the fragile safety they'd woven around the girl. Flankers peeled off at Jacob's signal, a quick flash of his headlight, scouting the bends ahead, while Marcus took rear guard, his massive frame cutting through the air on a customized Indian that roared like a beast unchained. The pack moved as one organism, 43 bikes weaving through the midday haze, dust kicking up in faint plumes, where the road met gravel shoulders. Lena rode point on Jacob's left, her eyes scanning the mirrors, the faint scent of her rose-tattooed arms mingling with the exhaust when they paused at stops. She'd patched up enough strays in her life to know when fear hid deeper wounds. Mia's silences spoke volumes, hints of a home that locked doors against the very kids it swore to protect. "Keep her close," Lena had murmured before they mounted up, her voice a soft anchor in the mill's dying firelight. Jacob nodded then, the weight of Elias's dog tags pressing against his chest like a reminder etched in metal. Miles stretched, the sun beating down now, turning the highway into a shimmering ribbon that tested resolve. Mia shifted behind him, her voice cutting through the rush. "Those lights! They're coming faster." Jacob glanced back, the pursuit now clear. Not one car, but two, sleek black sedans, unmarked, their forms slicing through traffic like knives. Harlan's reach extended further than a single desperate man. Allies in uniforms or worse, bought with the same dirty coin that silenced complaints in places like Willow Creek. Jacob's mind raced to the old days, the war's aftermath when he'd ridden with Elias, dodging checkpoints in foreign dust bowls. "Promised we'd build something better," Elias had said one night by a campfire, stars indifferent overhead. "A code that don't break for badges or bucks." Jacob had laughed it off then, but the iron promise rose from those embers, a network of wanderers, vets and survivors who traded blood ties for unbreakable bonds. He twisted the throttle, the Harley surging ahead, the convoy matching his pace in a fluid ballet of chrome and resolve. The lead sedan pushed closer, its horn blaring a hollow warning, but Marcus swung wide, blocking the lane with deliberate menace. No aggression, just presence, a wall of leather and loyalty that forced the car to brake, tires screeching on the blacktop. The second vehicle swerved, attempting to flank, but Lena and two others closed the gap, their bikes forming an impenetrable V. Shouts carried on the wind, indistinct but laced with authority. "Pull over! State business!" Jacob's jaw set. He'd danced this dance before, seen good men cuffed for standing ground, but Mia wasn't cargo. She was the spark reigniting a vow long dormant. "Hold on," he called over his shoulder, feeling her nod against his back. The chase crested a rise, the road dipping into a valley where the river ran parallel, its waters churning silver under the sun. Jacob spotted the turnoff, a forgotten service road to Blackridge, lined with overgrown ferns and the faint hum of cicadas. "Take the cut!" he bellowed into the wind, the signal rippling through hand gestures and flashes. The pack diverged, engines harmonizing in a controlled frenzy, peeling onto the narrower path while the sedans hesitated at the fork. Gravel spat under tires, the convoy bouncing over ruts, branches scraping like whispers of caution. Mia gasped at a jolt, but her grip held firm, trust forged in the mill's hearth now tempered by motion. Behind, Marcus reported via radio crackle, "They're turning, slow, we've got distance." As the dust settled, the group reformed in a clearing by the riverbank, bikes idling low, the air thick with the earthy scent of moss and cooling metal. Jacob killed his engine, dismounting to help Mia down, her legs shaky, but eyes alight with something new, gratitude, perhaps, or the first taste of agency. The riders circled up, a loose perimeter against the tree line, faces etched with the quiet intensity of those who'd stared down worse. Lena approached, handing Mia a water bottle, the plastic crinkling softly. "Drink slow, we're not done riding yet." Mia took it, her gaze flicking to Jacob. "You didn't have to risk this, for me." Jacob knelt by the river's edge, skipping a pebble across the surface, ripples spreading like the choices ahead. "Risks what we signed up for. Long time ago, lost a brother in a place that chewed up promises and spit out lies. He made me swear. Look out for the ones the system forgets. Elias called it the iron promise, unbendable, like the metal we ride." His voice trailed, the dog tags glinting as he pulled them free, the engraved letters worn smooth by years. Mia traced them with her eyes, a silent understanding passing. Her own story unfolded in pieces, not the horrors, but the isolation. The nights plotting escape from a director who traded kids like commodities. "There are others," she said softly. "Back there. They need this too." The radio buzzed again, Marcus confirming the sedans had backed off, circling the main road like vultures denied a meal. But Jacob knew Harlan wouldn't stop. Men like him thrived on control, unraveling at the threat of exposure. Blackridge lay 10 miles on, its sympathetic judge a beacon in the murk, a man who'd once ridden with them, trading gavel for throttle in retirement. "We get you there," Jacob said, standing, the sun warming his shoulders. "Tell your truth. Let the promise handle the rest." The group mounted up, engines stirring to life, the river's murmur fading behind. Yet as they rolled out, a new shadow loomed, not pursuit but doubt. One rider, a young vet named Tyler with eyes haunted by desert sands, pulled Jacob aside at a pause. "This could drag us all in, Jake. Badger's got long arms." Jacob met his gaze, the bond of shared battles unspoken. "That's the oath, brother. We bend for no one." Tyler nodded, resolve hardening, the family chosen knitting tighter. The road to Blackridge twisted onward, promising revelations and reckonings, the weight of 43 oaths carrying them forward. In the quiet spaces between revs, Honor whispered, "This fight was just awakening, a moral fire spreading against the gathering storm." The tires hummed over the cracked pavement of the service road, the convoy slicing through the afternoon light like a silver arrow loosed from a bow. Jacob led the pack, the Harley's frame vibrating with the steady thrum that had become Mia's reluctant lullaby, her body leaning into his back with a trust that felt both earned and fragile. The river's distant rush faded as the path widened, merging back onto the fringes of Route 17, where the hills rolled out like the folds of an old map, scarred by time and forgotten travelers. Sunlight filtered through the canopy overhead, dappling the road in shifting patterns that danced across wet chrome. But the air carried an undercurrent of tension, thicker now, laced with the faint acrid bite of exhaust from the bikes trailing in precise formation. 43 riders, their leathers creaking softly with each lean, eyes hidden behind visors that reflected the world in mirrored silence. They'd shaken the sedans for now, but Jacob's instincts prickled like sand under the skin. Harlan's kind didn't retreat without claws extended. Mia's voice rose above the wind, tentative but clear. "Blackridge, is it safe there? Or just another stop before they drag me back?" Her words tugged at Jacob, stirring memories of his own flight years ago. A 16-year-old ghost haunting back roads, saved only by the rumble of a stranger's engine. He glanced over his shoulder, the dog tag swinging against his chest like a pendulum marking unspoken debts. "Safe as we make it," he replied, his tone gravel-rough but steady. "Judge Harlan, no relation to that snake. Mind you, owes the promise a few turns. Rode with us once before the bench called him home. He'll hear you out, no strings." Elias's oath echoed in the spaces between. Protect the lost, bend the broken systems with truth, not fists. Jacob had strayed from it after the war, chasing horizons that blurred into numbness, but this girl, with her storm-worn eyes, had yanked him back like a chain, long-rusted but unyielding. Behind them, the formation held tight, Lena riding shotgun on Jacob's flank, her bike's custom exhaust popping faintly like distant gunfire. She'd lost count of the strays she'd mended. Kids with bruises hidden under sleeves, veterans with ghosts in their gazes. But Mia's quiet revelations at the riverbank had struck deep. Whispers of locked rooms in Willow Creek, where disappearances meant transfers to worse shadows, funded by grants and guarded by silence. Lena's tattooed arms flexed as she adjusted her grip, the roses inked there, a bloom of defiance against the thorns of her past. Marcus brought up the rear, his Indian a dark sentinel, radio clipped to his belt crackling with updates. Clear skies, no tails. But Tyler, the young vet riding just behind, wrestled his own demons. Desert flashbacks clawed at him during lulls like this, the whine of incoming fire, the betrayal of orders that left brothers in the dust. "This could cost us everything," he'd muttered earlier, his voice tight over the engine's growl. Jacob had clapped his shoulder then, the gesture heavy with shared sand. "Cost is what we pay for the promise, Ty." Elias didn't ride for easy. The road dipped into a shallow valley, the air growing warmer, heavy with the scent of wild sage brushing the undercarriage. Blackridge emerged on the horizon, a cluster of weathered buildings huddled against the foothills, the courthouse a squat brick sentinel with a flag snapping lazily in the breeze. As the convoy crested the final rise, engines throttling down to a purposeful purr, Jacob signaled a loose perimeter. Scouts fanning out to the edges of town, eyes on the main drag where locals paused mid-stride, coffee cups frozen in hands. Whispers rippled through the streets like wind through dry grass. 43 bikes rolling in wasn't subtle. Chrome glinting under the sun like a challenge issued without words. Mia straightened behind Jacob, her breath catching at the sight of normalcy. A diner with steam fogging the windows, kids on bikes scattering like startled birds. For a moment, the chase felt distant, a nightmare dissolving in daylight. They pulled up to the courthouse steps, the pack dismounting in a synchronized wave, boots thudding against the gravel lot. Jacob helped Mia down, her sneakers scuffing the dust, the thermal blanket still draped over her shoulders like a cape of borrowed courage. The judge, Elias Harlan, silver-haired and broad as a barrel, his eyes sharp from years behind the bench, emerged from the shadowed doorway. His robe swapped for a faded iron promise vest that hung loose over a flannel shirt. "Jake Hale," he rumbled, a grin cracking his weathered face as he clasped forearms in the old grip. "Heard the rumble from my chambers. What's the fire this time?" Jacob nodded toward Mia, who stood a little taller under the scrutiny. "Girl needs a fair ear. Foster system's got hooks in her. Deep ones. Directors chasing shadows to keep 'em buried. The judge's expression sobered, lines deepening like cracks in parched earth. He'd traded the road for justice after losing a son to the same bureaucratic grind. A kid shuffled through homes until the system claimed him in silence. "Inside," he said, gesturing to the cool hush of the hallway where the air smelled of polished wood and old paper. Lena and Marcus flanked Mia as they entered, the rest of the crew holding the fort outside, a living barrier against prying eyes. In the chamber, sunlight slanted through high windows, casting golden bars across the desk where Mia sat, her voice unfolding like a tightly wound spring finally released. No graphic tales, just the essence, fear in the nights, promises of safety twisted into threats, other kids vanishing into the ether of relocations. Judge Harlan listened, pen scratching notes, his face a mask of controlled fury. This Harlan, the director, he's got ties to county funds, all right. Smells like a racket preying on the unprotected. Outside, the air thickened as a familiar sedan crept into view at the town's edge. Harlan's, or one of his proxies, idling like a coiled snake. Tyler spotted it first, his hand drifting to his belt, but Jacob's voice cut through via radio. "Eyes on, hands off. Let the law play its part." Tension hummed through the group, leathers shifting, the faint clink of chains and keys a subtle underscore. Mia emerged after an hour, papers in hand, a temporary injunction, enough to buy time, her eyes brighter. The weight lifting like fog burned off by noon. "He believes me," she whispered to Jacob, the words a bridge across their shared solitude. But as the convoy reformed, engines stirring with a low growl that vibrated the ground, the sedan surged forward, blocking the lot's exit. Director Harlan stepped out, flanked by two deputies in crisp uniforms, their badges catching the light like false stars. "This ends now," he barked, voice echoing off the courthouse walls. "Kidnapping's a felony. Stand down." Jacob dismounted slowly, the pack mirroring him in eerie quiet, a sea of unblinking resolve. Mia tensed beside Lena, but Jacob's presence anchored her, the promise alive in his stance, unbowed. "We're standing for truth," he said evenly, the words carrying the full weight of 43 oaths. "Your move, Harlan, but justice don't hide in shadows anymore." The standoff stretched, the sun dipping lower, painting the scene in lengthening shadows. Deputies' hands hovered near holsters, but the riders' stillness held them at bay, a moral fortress against the tide of corruption. Tyler whispered to Marcus, doubt flickering. But loyalty won, binding them tighter. In that charged hush, with the scent of sage and tension thick in the air, Jacob knew the real ride was just beginning, a reckoning that would test every scar, every vow, pulling them deeper into the heart of the storm. If this chapter's tension has you on the edge, smash that like button. It keeps the engines running for what's next. The sun hung low over Blackridge, its rays slanting across the courthouse lot, like fingers accusing the standoff frozen in place. Director Harlan stood rigid, his suit rumpled from the chase, flanked by the two deputies whose postures screamed borrowed authority, hands itching near holsters, eyes flicking between the sea of leather-clad figures and the girl at their center. The air crackled with unspoken threats, thick with the mingled scents of sun-baked gravel, cooling engine oil, and the faint metallic tang of tension. 43 motorcycles formed an unyielding arc, their chrome accents glowing in the amber light. Riders dismounted and statuesque, a brotherhood etched in scars and shared silences. Jacob Hale stood at the fore, his boots planted firm, the dog tags beneath his vest a hidden talisman against the encroaching dusk. Harlan's voice sliced through the hush, sharp as a blade. "You've got no claim here, Hale. This girl's a runaway, state property. Step aside, or these good men will make you." The deputies shifted, one muttering into a radio clipped to his shoulder, the static hiss underscoring the bluff. But Jacob didn't flinch. His gaze, weathered by roads and regrets, locked onto Harlan's. Seeing the desperation beneath the bluster, a man cornered, his empire of silenced voices teetering. Mia pressed close to Lena, the nurse's arm a steady barrier, her rose tattoos vivid against the fading light. The girl's breath came quick, but her eyes held fire now, kindled by the judge's nod from the courthouse steps. Your papers clutched like a shield. "Truth's not property," Jacob said evenly, his words carrying the rumble of distant thunder, "and neither is she." The deputies advanced a step, boots crunching gravel, but Marcus moved like a shadow, positioning himself between them and the group, his broad frame a wall of quiet menace. No raised fists, no revved engines, just presence, the kind forged in foxholes and forgotten battles. Tyler, the young vet, felt the pull of old fears clawing up from his gut, the whine of desert winds echoing in his ears, but he held his ground beside Lena, the family's invisible threads binding him. Whispers rippled through the riders, fragments of past stands, oaths renewed in murmurs. Jacob's mind drifted to Elias, that final night in the outpost, the air heavy with the scent of diesel and defeat. "Build it right, Jake," his brother had gasped, pressing the tags into his palm. "A promise that don't shatter for suits or stars." Jacob had carried it like a wound, letting highways dull the ache, until Mia's collapse in the rain had ripped it open, raw and demanding. Harlan sneered, gesturing to the deputies. "Arrest them, all of them. Interfering with custody, that's federal." The first deputy hesitated, his hand freezing mid-reach, eyes darting to Jacob's unyielding stare. Something in the air shifted, the weight of 43 souls, each with stories of betrayal by badges and broken systems. Lena stepped forward then, her voice calm as a medic's in the chaos. "You boys know better. This ain't about law. It's about covering tracks. Girls got a statement inside, judge's orders. You really want to explain hauling innocents for a director with dirty ledgers?" The second deputy faltered, radio forgotten, the crackle dying to silence. Harlan's face twisted, sweat tracing lines down his temple, despite the cooling breeze rustling the flag overhead. In the pause, Mia's voice broke free, small but piercing. "They lock us in at night, say it's for safety, but kids go quiet, one by one. I saw the lists, the money changing hands, you're part of it." Her words hung like smoke, curling into the deputy's doubts, painting visions of audits and headlines that could shatter careers. The first deputy lowered his hand, exchanging a glance with his partner, the moral fracture widening. Harlan lunged forward, grabbing for Mia's arm, but Jacob intercepted with a single step, his grip on the director's wrist ironclad yet restrained. "Touch her, and the promise breaks you first." The contact was brief, a warning etched in pressure. Harlan yanking back as if burned, his facade crumbling into sputters. The standoff teetered, the sun dipping behind the hills, casting the lot in twilight's purple veil. From the courthouse, Judge Harlan emerged fully, his voice booming like a gavel's echo. "Enough! Director, you're on notice. Investigation starts at dawn. Deputies, stand down. This is my jurisdiction." The words landed heavy, the judge's vest a subtle emblem of alliances deeper than robes. The deputies backed off, holsters untouched, murmuring apologies as they retreated to their cruiser, engines coughing to life. Harlan stood alone now, isolated in the gathering dusk, his sedan a lifeline he scrambled toward. "This isn't justice," he hissed over his shoulder. "It's vigilantes playing God." But Jacob watched him go, the taillights fading like a defeated spark. Knowing the real unraveling had just begun, calls to higher offices, threads pulling at the promise's edges. The group exhaled as one, the tension uncoiling like a spring released, riders remounting with quiet efficiency, the clink of keys and zip of jackets a symphony of survival. Mia climbed behind Jacob again, her hold surer, the warmth of the engine chasing the chill from her bones. "They listened," she whispered, awe threading her tone. Jacob nodded, twisting the throttle as the convoy stirred, headlights piercing the twilight like stars igniting. Truth has a way, but Harlan's not done. He'll dig in, call favors. We ride to the safe house in Eldridge tonight. Regroup. Lena flanked them, her bike purring alongside, while Marcus scouted ahead, the path illuminated by the first fireflies dancing in the underbrush. As they rolled out of Blackridge, the town shrinking in the mirrors, the air cooled, carrying the crisp bite of evening pines and the faint, reassuring hum of unity. Tyler rode closer, his doubt eased by the victory, the oath reaffirmed in action. Jacob felt the dog tags settle against his chest. Elias's voice, a ghost in the wind. You did it right, brother. But shadows lingered, Harlan's network, the other lost kids waiting in Willow Creek's grip. The road curved into the night, promising rest but no surrender. The iron promise a beacon against the moral murk. 43 engines thrummed onward, guardians in the dark, their loyalty a flame that corruption couldn't quench. Yet in the quiet miles, Jacob sensed the storm gathering anew, tests of honor waiting just beyond the horizon's bend. The twilight deepened into a velvet shroud as the convoy carved through the winding backroads toward Eldridge, the engine's low growl a constant companion against the encroaching night. Jacob led the way, the Harley's headlight cutting a silver path through the gloom, illuminating fleeting glimpses of twisted oaks and starlit meadows that flanked the asphalt. Mia's presence behind him was a steady weight now. Her arms looped around his waist with the quiet assurance of someone who'd glimpsed the edge of despair and pulled back. The wind carried the cool kiss of mountain air, laced with the earthy whisper of ferns brushing the undercarriage. A balm after the courthouse's charged standoff. 43 bikes trailed in disciplined waves, their taillights weaving like fireflies in formation, a testament to the unbreakable rhythm of their bond. Lena rode close on Jacob's left, her silhouette sharp against the moon's rising glow, the faint pop of her exhaust punctuating the miles. She'd seen enough close calls in her nursing days, triage tents under foreign skies where loyalty meant the difference between life and lingering shadows, to know this ride carried more than just a girl to safety. Mia's fragmented stories from the chamber lingered in her mind, hints of isolation in Willow Creek, where fear muffled cries and placements masked deeper neglect. No need for stark details. The essence was enough to fuel the quiet fury simmering in the group. Marcus scouted ahead, his Indian's roar fading into the distance before circling back. Radio checks confirming the path clear, no sedans lurking in the dark, no Harlan shadows slinking behind. Tyler brought up the rear with a few others, his earlier doubts dissolved in the judge's intervention, replaced by the solid warmth of purpose reclaimed. Jacob's thoughts drifted with the road's curves, the dog tags cool against his skin, Elias's engraved words, a silent mantra. Honor the lost, Jake. Make it iron. He'd faltered after the war, letting the promise rust under layers of solitary miles, chasing sunsets that never healed the hollows. But tonight, with Mia's breath sinking to the engine's pulse, it felt reforged, hot, unyielding. Eldridge's safe house loomed in his mind, an old ranch house on the town's outskirts, tucked among rolling hills, run by promise allies who'd turned scars into sanctuary. No questions asked, just doors opened and fires lit. Almost there, Jacob called over his shoulder, the wind snatching his words, but not their intent. Mia nodded against his back, her voice soft in the rush. Feels like a dream, like you all just appeared. The convoy crested a final ridge, Eldridge unfolding below like a hidden valley cradled in the earth's palm. Streetlights flickered to life, casting warm pools on quiet lanes where ranch-style homes slumbered under the stars. They turned onto a gravel drive, hidden by a copse of pines, the crunch under tires announcing their arrival like a secret handshake. The safe house emerged, A sturdy timber structure with a wraparound porch, its windows glowing amber from within, the scent of wood smoke curling from the chimney. Engines wound down one by one, the sudden silence profound, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the soft patter of boots on stone. Riders dismounted, forming a loose circle as lanterns flickered on, illuminating faces etched with the day's toll. Weariness in the lines, but resolve in the eyes. Sarah, the house's keeper, a wiry woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and hands calloused from years tending strays, stepped out, wiping flour from her apron, the aroma of fresh bread wafting behind her. She'd been a promised widow once, losing her husband to a road too unforgiving, and now channeled that grief into haven building. "Jacob Hale," she greeted, her voice warm as hearth embers, clasping his forearm before turning to Mia. And this must be the spark that lit the ride. Mia hesitated, then stepped forward, the thermal blanket slipping from her shoulders like shed fear. Sarah enveloped her in a quick hug, no pity, just the quiet strength of welcome. Inside, the space unfolded. A great room with plank floors worn smooth, a fire crackling in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows on walls lined with faded photos of riders long gone. The group settled in waves, some tending bikes under the stars, oiling chains and checking tires with the ritual care of kin, others gathering around the oak table, where Sarah laid out stew steaming in iron pots, its savory notes mingling with the pine-scented air. Mia sat beside Lena, spooning broth slowly, colour returning to her cheeks as stories flowed in gentle currents. No interrogations, just shared fragments. Tyler recounting a desert patrol where a single oath saved his squad, Marcus offering a rare smile over his bowl. Jacob leaned against the mantel, nursing coffee black as midnight, watching Mia's guarded posture ease. The judge's papers lay on the table. Temporary guardianship filed under a neutral alias, enough to shield her from Harlan's grasp, while investigations peeled back the layers of Willow Creek's underbelly. As the fire popped softly, Sarah pulled Jacob aside to the porch, the night air crisp with the promise of dew. "Heard about the standoff. Harlan's calling in markers, but the judge's word carries weight. We'll get word to the other kids. Quiet channels, no traces." Jacob nodded, gazing at the star-strewn sky, the vastness mirroring the road's endless call. "She's got family now," he said, the words settling like truth. "Chosen, not given." Inside, Mia laughed at something Lena said, a light sound, fragile but real, echoing the redemption threading through their scars. By dawn's first blush, painting the hills in rose and gold, the convoy stirred anew. Bikes gleamed under the light, ready for whatever horizon beckoned. Patrols to monitor Harlan's retreat, whispers to unravel the network snaring the lost. Mia mounted behind Jacob one last time for the short ride into town, where she'd meet a counselor tied to the promise, a bridge to stability. "Thank you," she whispered as the engine hummed to life, her grip a vow of her own. Jacob revered gently, the group falling in behind, a thunderous farewell that shook the leaves. The road unfurled, carrying them forward, the iron promise unbroken, a legacy of silent courage, where one girl's rescue rippled into justice for many. In the quiet aftermath, Jacob felt Elias's presence in the wind, a nod of approval from beyond the miles. Honor redeemed, loyalty eternal. The engines faded into the morning, leaving Eldridge in peace, but the fire they'd kindled burned on, a moral blaze against the world's gathering shadows. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If these tales of unbreakable promises and chosen family moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got more stories of quiet heroism waiting on the horizon.